Alright. Turn this down. So this stream is my last Cobb tune stream I think I'll be doing in quite a while, if not ever. Let me get my chat window fixed on this real quick. Uh-oh. Is it working now? There we go. Don't understand why this chat window thing is so dicked up. It won't let me make it skinnier. What's up, man? How you doing? Welcome to my final Cobb tune stream. This is the last one. My license expires in a couple days. I'm not renewing. Move this around. Hey, Kurt. How's everybody doing? I'm just juggling this chat window. Usually it lets me reshape it or resize it, but it's not. I might have something selected in here to maintain an aspect ratio or something. Yeah, here it is. I do. Let's do it this way. See if that fixes it. Hey, look at that. Almost perfect. All right, guys. So yeah, it's cold. It's like 10 degrees or 20 degrees right now. Intake air temp on the car is reading 10, but that's because I don't have the intake air temp sensor scaled correctly. So I need to do that. And then Aaron says, "Ready for the snow?" ? It's already snowing. It's not a matter of being ready for it. Like, it is happening. Do I have audio? Okay, I see the thing moving. Okay, just want to make sure. All right. So this is an 11 STI, nothing fancy, turbo, and some stuff, I think. So let me get the mods list really quick and take a peek. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Dom 1.5, 1050s, 340 pump, 3-port, external gate, Cobb SF, header, IAT relocate, Cobb catted downpipe, stock top mount, stock air pump, stock TGVs. Okay, so that's what we got. Now, I made a base map for this already. Like I said before, it wasn't totally complete because I failed to calibrate the IAT. So actually, you see the IAT calibration is open right now. I'm doing that. And then I'm just verifying that I did everything else correctly for the start. I mean, it runs. I mean for like the start of the whole dyno session tune. Aaron says, lots of snow on the way. Yeah, man. I just got the weather alert saying 6 to 10 inches. That's going to be something, I think. Wish I had a plow. I don't. I wish my truck wasn't as messed up as it is. But I don't have that call. I don't have that choice either. I would really like to get a plow on the truck and get my stuff together on the truck. So I finally made it for the live session. Hey, TJ. Man, boy, that font is really small. I need to make that bigger somehow. What do I do about that? I don't know. I don't know how to make you guys bigger. But it doesn't matter. I'll only look at that occasionally. Actually, I should put it on my phone. That's a better idea, right? So I can just look at it, look at you guys if I need to, and get the tune in. So again, I just did the calibration on the IAT. All I did was just compare it to one that I already had the GM sensor calibration done on. So let me mute those two now. How do I do that? There we go. Okay. Now I can see your guys' chat because that screen is too small. Plus, I'll be on my tune screen. Won't be on this. All right, now I'm ready. Okay, so all I did was just get the GM calibration off of another tune that I had, and yeah, that was it. So the difference between stock and the GM tune or calibration is, well, you see all those different numbers there. Let me bring it. I'll compare it to stock. Okay, let me see. For the stock, let's see if that shows up on stream correctly. All right, so here is stock. The biggest changes you see will be to the right side. And this is really where we operate mostly on this anyways. I mean, here's 19 degrees, so, you know, we're down here now to begin with. Oh, wow, that screen showed up. Those things never show up. And then we operate from here up to about 1.7-ish volts, you know, on the factory sensor, 150 degrees or so is about, that's the normal range that we're operating in. Now that's a stock sensor. And if you look now at the aftermarket one, here, you'll see the 150 is here, and if we go to the right here, it's like 9 instead of 20. And this, you remember before, was 19, now it's 33. So the big changes are right in the region that we use it the most, and it's about 10 to 20 degrees based on what voltage we're at. So it's not a gigantic change in calibration, but it is a change, and so in order to be correct, we need to be right. And that's more important on speed density than it is on something like this that's just a math car, because it's just a regular math car, nothing too crazy. Now, the reason that this stream is called Last Cobb Tune is because I opted not to renew my Cobb membership, and so at the end of the month it goes out, and I will no longer have it for December. So just so you guys understand what's going on, I will not be doing Cobb stuff for a while. And it's and that's not a dig against Cobb or anything like that, just to be clear. The main reason for that is I am back in school and I'm trying to change my focus, and I don't want to deal with a lot of factory ECU stuff right now because the EPA is really coming down on tuners. And granted, most of the stuff that I do is in compliance. It's, you know, most of the stuff. So there's a few things that have, you know, maybe TGB deletes, which is a common one, right? Because for the flex fuel and all that. And the fact that they're so stingy on the TGB deletes is kind of stupid, but I understand. So I just don't want to deal with that hassle, honestly. So let me grab this mod list one more time to make sure that I got everything that I wanted to take care of. I'm looking right now at this compensation table. I can hear the injectors clicking, so I'm guessing it has fuel rails on it. Mods list 1050s, and it has 1050s. XTR 350. Well, it doesn't say fuel rails on here, so I'll be right back. I'm gonna take a peek and see if the fuel rails are on it, because that will affect this compensation dramatically. That's the thing about ID injectors. They work great, but part of that is that they're a little noisy. There's a lot of pulsations created when you have something that flows as much as the injectors flow. They open, they shut. That opening I'm just going to call it a large orifice, and then shutting it, you get a dip in pressure and then a subsequent rise in pressure. So you get that loud carried on click. And big injectors of all sizes, you know, or all big injectors will do that. So when you go to fuel rails and the big injectors, you hear it even more. It sounds almost like piston slap. So like right now I'm listening to the engine, and I thought it was a forged engine when I started it. It's not. It's a stock motor. It's a stock engine. It's just the injectors are making noise because they go through the hard line that's right here on the A pillar. The hard line comes down and goes under your feet on the driver's side. So you hear that clack, 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 clack inside the car. What brand coils and plug do I recommend? What application are we talking about? It's like a little water hammer, like what happens in big pumps and stuff. Yeah, kind of like that. Kind of like that. You know, water hammer is more about the flow rate than anything of the water. And that's the sorry, it's not even the velocity of the water. So the pipe is really small and it's moving really fast, and you have a lot of inertia from that, and that's where the water hammer really comes in. You have the same flow rate through a big pipe, which means the velocity is really low, and you won't have very much water hammer. So, yeah, it's similar to that, but it's more just about reducing the pressure with a big orifice opening up, and then shutting it again, and having the pressure come back up again, more than about the velocity of it flowing through it. So similar, but not exactly the same. Yeah. So brand coils and plugs. I assume you mean for Subaru or something. For Subaru OEM, unless you're doing like a big build with an aftermarket EMS, in which case I would do some IGN1As or whatever. There's no point. I don't like any of the other Subaru specific aftermarket ones. All the ones that I've seen on the market fail prematurely or cause failure, like the Okada Plasma Directs. Those are trash. And then I haven't been a fan of the OTLs either. Those things fail all the time, at least in our experience. Every car here that shows up with those has got a bad one. I bought a car and it had 4 on it, but there was one, it was bad in, like, days after I got it. So not really a big fan of those. Okay, so we're gonna go 22 psi pump. I'm going 92 octane, and then the guy's name, his initials, like the initials. All right. So 1050 injectors, DOM 1.5, 1.5 XTR, stock TGVs, stock air pump, catted downpipe. Sorry, I'm putting comments in on the map, notes of what it is. IAT, I think the GM IAT relocate. It's not mine. Factory top mount and killer bee header. Let's see. I think that should do it. That's more than enough information. I mean, you usually don't need that much on the tune, to be honest with you. Oh yeah, external gate and 3-port. EWG, 3-port, EBCS. All right. I'm gonna flash that. Flash. Subaru Turbo plays taps softly. Oh. Yeah, plays taps softly, right? NGK, and depends on what you're doing. You're doing like, okay, so one thing about plugs that's not talked about. If you look at the NGK plugs for the OEM, they call them the laser iridiums, the SILs. They're what's called a high ignitability plug. Then you have the regular iridiums. They don't call them high ignitability plugs. Then they come out with the rutheniums, and they call those high ignitability plugs. Now, what does that actually mean inside the spark plug? I don't know. I wish I did. I wish I did know what they called it. But what they're saying is that it's a plug that does a better job of lighting off the mixture. In other words, they're saying that it's able to do it with less effort. So they're saying that it could ignite a mixture. It can create an arc in a more What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, that is ice on the wall. It can create an arc in a more what's the word's on the tip of my tongue. It's not detrimental, not hazardous. It's going to say difficult in a more difficult situation. So, what makes it difficult for spark plugs to ignite? The air fuel mixture. Well, creating a gap or creating an arc across the gap is what the coil has to do. That's what's difficult, or the spark plug has to do. And that's the difficult part of it. I missed a square on this thing. There it is. So, sorry, let me clear this up and then restart my thought for you so I can make a coherent thought out of it. Okay. Okay, so if we back up, air and fuel don't connect electricity. Air by itself, our environment does not conduct electricity. Gasoline does not conduct electricity. It means that they're insulators, they're not conductors. So if I pack more insulating atoms between 2 points, then it is more difficult to get electrons through those points. In order to do that, I have to have so much voltage that I ionize those molecules or atoms between those 2 points to where I can force current flow. And so that's what the spark plug does. The coil, giving the spark plug the energy to, and the spark plug taking that energy, concentrating into a point, and allowing it to break through that wall of atoms, we'll say. So what they're saying is that their high ignitability plug is better at taking the energy from the coil pack and jumping the gap between the two electrodes. So they're saying it does a better job. So in a harsher environment where you have more and more insulator between those 2 points, it's going to do a better job than when they're regular or what ignitability plug is going to do. So the standard NGK iridium is not a high ignitability plug. It's a durable plug and it handles high temperature as well, which is what we need in a turbocharged motor. But we also need high ignitability. It's awful handy to have less misfire events or to have a more consistent, brighter spark. That makes the job of the ECU and the tuner and everything a lot easier. So there's a lot of cases where I tell people to stick with the stock plug. Mostly that's in ethanol cars. They say stick with stock plug because you need the heat at the plug to help vaporize and atomize the ethanol in the chamber so that you can even ignite it. So, all right. So what do I recommend? I recommend a high ignitability plug. Which one is that? Depends on your build. Depends on what you're doing. So either the ruthenium or the factory laser iridium. If you run ethanol, the factory laser iridium and stock heat range. If you're on pump gas, probably a step colder on either, I'm putting the seatbelt so you don't hear that. Step colder on either the iridiums or the rutheniums. And if you're really high horsepower and high boost, probably the rutheniums because they're a high ignitability plug. Now, unfortunately, that wasn't an answer where I just said X or Y. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people want. A lot of people don't realize that the correct answer depends on the situation, on the build, on the desires, on the use. All that stuff matters. And so there isn't a blanket, this one's better. It's like the whole competition versus street AOS thing. Like I said, well, it's competition, so it's better. Well, no, it's not. It's not better. It's different. It's different for a different operation environment. If you're on a street car and you got stock location turbo and you're on MAF and you're on a competition AOS, you're done fucked up. Okay. right now is I'm loading the car at 60 miles an hour to do two things. I want to calibrate the tach on the dyno to make sure it's going to read the same amount as with the car as I'm in fourth gear and all that. But I'm also looking at my boost versus my air fuel. I want to make sure that my open loop, closed loop thresholds are appropriate for this setup. I've already done them initially when I made the base map for this car, but I want to make sure that they're correct. So I'm going into there, I'm adding a little bit of boost, 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pounds, and seeing it riching up, make sure it's riching up like it's supposed to. Ideally, what will happen is this has the ability of running closed loop into a little bit of boost, and it'll be relatively accurate for a little bit of boost. So what I do is I set the closed loop targets on the rich side when you're in boost, and I say on the rich side, what I mean richer than stoic, but not that's too rich. So bring that map up right here. This one looks like it's actually stock still. I didn't add any to it. This one's stock. So at 39. So this is great. This is actually transitioning exactly where I want to do into open loop. So I'm not even into closed loop in boost in this case, which is good. But it wouldn't hurt for me to add fuel to the closed loop target. So in the event where the load is just right, the timing's off, you know, something's happening where it happens to be closed loop as I come into boost a little bit, that it starts adding fuel intentionally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a window. I'm going to look at my log list. I'm going to see, I want my learning, I want my correction, I want my ratio, my ABCS, all four cams, make sure they're all working correctly. I'm going to double check barometric pressure. It should be fine because it's got stock TGVs, like I said, so it should, or stock air pumps, so it should have no issues with that. But I'm going to check it anyways because those things do fail sometimes. Then we're going to go multiplier for SMGs, engine speed, feedback knock, 5 knock learn. So we're going to start off. Let's see, ignition timing. I just do total timing because I know where I'm getting my timing from typically, and if I see a situation where the timing is not what I expect, then I'll pull open the individual timings and see if one of them is adding or pulling when I'm not expecting it to. Intake air temp, manifold relative pressure. It's not speed density car. If it was speed density car, I'd use absolute pressure because that matches the the volumetric efficiency table. Sorry, I looked at the chat too. Thank you for killing the seatbelt chime. Yeah, no problem. Let's see what else we got in here. I'm not gonna do requested torques. I know where that's gonna be unless I have issues with some stuff. I'll do turbodynamics boost error because that tells me how hard the boost control system is trying to. Actually, that's not true. It tells me what error I have between target and actual, and if I see weird errors, then I can find issues where I goofed up with X or Y. All right, so we're gonna put that on here. Bring that back up. That's all the way on the left side. All right, that works. Move this like this. Put it right here. All right, did I calculate a load on there? I did. All right, so I'm gonna see what calculated load is in that transition part. Because right now the air fuels are perfect. As soon as boost comes in, air fuel riches up just a little bit. At 3 pounds-ish, I'm seeing 12.5. I love that. That's great. 5 pounds, 12.5. I love that. That's great. So it's right in the range where I want it to be. There's no delay. There's no hesitation. There was no. It just went 14s, 13, 12.5. Nice and smooth and steady. It's really good. But again, I want to be able to make sure that in case something happens, ECU is doing its job, and I want more fuel in that point. So on the closed loop target. So I'm gonna go and hit that spot again. Now you can see, this is important to look at. You'll notice air fuel sensor ratio, wait, is that even showing? Yes it is. So air fuel sensor ratio, you'll see, dives into 11s right away, okay? It's not 11s. That's super important to understand, it's not 11s. It's reading that rich because exhaust manifold pressure is going up, which messes up basically the calibration of the sensor, how it works, and it makes it read really rich. Now you can correct that if you know manifold pressure. There is an equation you can correct the reading to be correct. Now, you can't do it in the Cobb software, but standalone EMSs like Mtron will do that. So I get there again. Oh, that's really good. Okay, that's right at atmospheric. That's so good. All right, let's calculate a load at that point. So right around 1.4 to 1.6, which is what I expected. It's usually 1.4 to 1.6. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add fuel to that part of the map. Now, you have to be careful here. I'm going to do it just in this area like that. If I add too much fuel here, my closed loop target will become richer and richer and richer, and I can pop myself into open loop just by having too rich of a closed loop target. So that's something to keep in mind if you're doing this. If you're a noobin and first time doing it, don't go over here and just add a bunch of fuel into it. I'm only trying to add a little bit, you know, get her 13.5 would be ideal. It's where I'd like to see it in closed loop, so I know that as it's transitioning through, it's starting to add some fuel. Maybe even, you know, 13.0 or something, but not too far, because if I get too far, then I affect the way everything else transitions. So I don't want to add too much of this, but I do want to add a little bit. And I'm going to go to the 1.2 spot. I'm going to blend it over just to give a little bit of a ramp too. And that's it. So I'm going to do here. I'm going to do both maps at the, like I said, you see it's somewhat higher RPM. It's when the boost would come in. So we're just going to add a little bit of fuel to the closed loop. And then we're going to check our thresholds and see where they're set. So we know that we added 1 to the closed loop target. Now that's in addition to anything else that's on a closed loop target. So there's other ones that we have to look at based on coolant temperature. This one here, you see it's 0, this is 0. If those had a value in them, we have to take that into account as well. So it starts off a stoichiometric ratio, then you knock some off for this table, you knock some off for this table. Here it is, you knock some off for the TPS table. So you got to make sure you don't go too far, because what you'll do is you will force yourself with this one here into an open loop situation. This one and another table, actually. So I'm going to set this at 13.2 with this, yeah, 13.3-ish right there. Like that. That is a threshold that'll push you into open loop. So when you go richer than that, it pushes you open loop. Now, this can actually screw up what I already said was amazing with the current transitions. Because if this table here is too lean and it's not activating based on this one and based on that other table, then I can actually get a situation where now all of a sudden the closed loop table isn't aggressive enough to add enough fuel to it. Now all of a sudden I'm actually a smidge too lean in that transition point. So you gotta be aware of that and do some tests and stuff too as you're doing it. But I'm gonna save this like that. I'm not gonna flash this yet. I will save that for the next flash, and I will check it again next time. I don't want to spend time flashing it right now for no reason. This is another one to watch out for. TPS enrichment here, 13.3. That one is associated with this one, so you can pop it open really quick too. So this was a struggle for me for a bit. Which part, Captain Kirk? Thank God you have a stream. I was listening to a local guy talk about his awful build on YouTube. Much rather listen to your wonderful voice. Oh, Ashton. Yeah, my wonderful voice. No, it's not wonderful. If it is, then I need to get my ears fixed, but I don't think it is. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the compliment. I will sing for you. Just kidding. Just kidding. I won't do that. Where was it? Okay, so we got that part adjusted for now. We'll see how it plays out. I'm turning the heat down in the car. I had it cranked up for a bit because it was 20 degrees out there. So, okay. All right, my wastegate duty cycle table should be like 0. That's how I set all my base tables. Let me just verify I did that. Yep, sure enough, there it is. Okay, so that's good. I set everything the way I wanted to set it in the base map. Everything seems to be tracking. Intake air temp now says 25 instead of 10, so that's more accurate where it is. Now, that's intake air temp sensor. In Cobb's global heading says pre-turbo. It's not in this case. It's been relocated to the intercooler on the bottom near the throttle body. So this is post intercooler, which I think is like the most important thing you could possibly do to a Subaru to make it last longer. because this compensates for heat soak in the intake tract, all sorts of things, or inadequate intercooling, allows the ECU to see the higher temperature, pull timing, all kinds of stuff. I highly recommend everyone does it. So, oh, the closed loop fuel target, sure, yeah. The final Cobb tune, yep, yeah, Mark, the final Cobb tune. My license ends at the end of the month, and what's today, like 28th or something? 29th? Yeah, so that's it. I have no more Cobb tunes between my license expiring. So I opted not to renew for reasons that I discussed earlier in the stream. So just doing this one really as a favor to Tier 1. Now, that being said, I should clarify, this is the final Cobb tune on my Cobb license. I canceled mine. But Tier 1 is getting their own license. And I will be assisting them at times with their tuning on that. But for the most part, they have another guy that's going to be doing most of the Cobb tuning for the stage stuff. And the big builds will be saved for me. But as it usually plays out, big builds are typically going to be standalone now because the Cobb stuff can't do a lot of big builds because of all the emission stuff. So race cars will kind of be my thing. And then the stage cars will be Keith's thing. So yeah, it's the final tune on my Cobb license. Unless at some point I decide to renew it. But right now I'm back in school. I'm back in college, doing more stuff, working on new products, and that's going to be doing a lot of this for a while. I'm going to do a low throttle pull, just a little bit of boost. That was 7 pounds. That was 7 pounds. And I only went to 5,000 RPM when the traction control kicked on. So that was interesting. I don't know why the traction control kicked on. Usually they don't on these STIs. Usually it stays okay, but I'll set the diff to full lock this time. That'll minimize that. Yeah, so I'm below my boost target, as we would expect. As you see the turbodynamics boost error. I think the log shows up, right? Yep. Manifold pressure, 8 pounds on here. Timing was in the low teens, so extremely safe for such low boost. Cams look like they're even. Air-fuel ratio looks good. Calculated load looks as expected. Multiplier stayed at 1, but not that I give a shit about that too much. So overall, that looked really good for just a tiny little pull. I like that. Turn off the traction control. And I'm going to lock the diff just to give us a little more stability. I'm putting Start Sharp, and that doesn't matter because I don't have any wastegate duty cycle based on my SI drive. But I do want to roll it and just make sure everything's acting correctly. I've got good response out of my cams. Looking at my ABCS, my left and right intake, I'm verifying that they're together within a few degrees, and exhaust as well. Make sure that intake and exhaust are within a few degrees, and they are. They're behaving correctly, so that's important too. Get a little more throttle. All right, there's a little feedback at the beginning of that. So if we take a peek at it, we've got a load of 1.3, which is that area I was talking about where I wanted to add fuel. Oh, no, actually, it's slightly below that area, but I did put a little bit in the 1.3 area. I got 2 pounds of boost, but I've got 30 degrees of timing. Now, that's not bad. That's actually right around where the factory timing curve is in that region. But apparently it doesn't like it. So you either add fuel or pull timing. The thing about timing is it's pretty absolute. You pull enough timing and you can almost always immediately give it a knock. And fuel is one of those things that can be pretty variable. So just adding fuel alone isn't always the smartest idea unless the fuel is just way off to begin with. But I don't know what it is, so I'm going to look at it, see what it is here. The fuel, what RPM is that? 2,800. It's 13 at the tailpipe. So it's 13 at the tailpipe. Let's see what this says here. This thing says 14 here. So that's actually interesting that the tailpipe read richer than the factory O2. That's not common, honestly. And you see it added some fuel as well while it was still closed loop. It's adding fuel in that region. Some of that's going to be due to the fuel target that I added. Okay. So yeah, I need to add a little fuel right there, just a little bit. But that's closed loop. You see it's closed loop right there. That's not open loop fueling. So adding it to the open loop fuel table won't help unless I'm trying to force it into open loop sooner. And in this case, I don't want to force it into open loop. Now, if I add to the closed loop table, though, all that's doing is adding I could be wrong about that. So in here we have commanded fuel final, and I don't have that on there. I need to put that in the log actually. So commanded fuel final is not what a lot of people think it is. It is not the same thing as closed loop fuel target, which also exists. Okay, one of them is what I call the fuel mass demand. One of them is saying I want enough fuel mass for the engine, if everything's calibrated correctly, I want this air fuel, and so it's going to put in a specific fuel mass. Okay, that's pre-feedback. This is what I'm trying to make happen. Then the other one is in the feedback loop. I want to use my feedback to establish this air fuel ratio. So sometimes commanded and closed loop are not going to match. An example of that would be mid RPM range, medium load when the evap solenoid from the fuel tank is running. Commanded fuel final will be 17 or 18. Closed loop target's going to be 14. Okay? So it's important that you if you're tuning these cars, that you understand that there is a difference. One of them is the fuel mass commanded, and one of them is the closed loop AFR, which is going to correct to. So when you see a car, when the evap solenoid kicks on, what it does is it says, okay, fuel vapor is flammable, and I am ingesting fuel vapor. Not only am I ingesting the flammable fuel vapor into the engine, so I'm getting flammable components into my mixture that don't come from the fuel injectors, I'm also displacing air with this flammable fuel vapor. So in two ways, I'm actually making the car go rich. So what the ECU does, it says, okay, evap duty cycle is X. I know that's going to displace this much oxygen and add this much fuel. So my commanded fuel mass needs to go down because I'm getting fuel mass from somewhere else. So what you see then is you see commanded fuel final goes into the 17s or so based on what you're in. But through that whole cycle, it knows this car won't fucking run at 17. It needs to run at 14 or whatever. So the closed loop target is going to stay at 14 whatever, but the commanded fuel, right, the commanded mass of fuel is being told to go in the engine is going to be richer. Do I ever lean out idle from like 14.5 to 14.7? That is such a tiny amount. It is, in my opinion, completely pointless to even screw with. So the answer is no. The other thing is that the air fuel that you see in the tailpipe or in the header is not exactly what's in the engine itself, because there's burning of fuel happening in the tailpipe. Now, that being said, that would imply that the cylinder might be actually, what would that say? Is it richer or later? I don't know, I think about that a little bit. But they don't exactly match. And I know that this engine does not like to run lean. When you start leaning out air fuel ratios on the EJ, they start misfiring like crazy. They have what's called a narrow flammability window. The flammability window is the air fuel ratio range that the engine will operate. It's a function of the geometry of the head, the bore, the stroke, the dish, the piston, all that stuff creates a flammability window. And engines that are over square like the Subaru with a big bore and a short stroke. That's what oversquare is. They don't have a wide window of operation. Their flame build window is very narrow. Engines with a long bore and a short, and more compact combustion chambers, etc., those have a wider flammability window. You can run those 15, 16 to 1, and they'll run quite well. You'll have a whole lot of oxides of nitrogen, from your emissions from your tailpipe doing that, but they'll run quite well. A Subaru, an EJ, I should specify an EJ, not an FA, an EJ will misfire like a Mobitch over 15.3-ish or whatever. You'll start getting a lot of misfires on the engine. So no, I don't like to lean them out at idle any more than they already are from the factory. The factory's already leaned it out enough. Like they're trying to get the engine clean anyways. So if they've added fuel at idle, it's not because they are trying to accomplish something different other than make the car run as good as possible. I don't want to start inducing more misfires on it and everything like that. So no, I wouldn't lean that idle, and I never do. The only thing I ever do actually is rich at idle. If I get really big fuel injectors, like 1700s, for example, they won't run an engine at stoichiometric fuel ratio very well at all. And so you have to set a richer target to even get enough fuel in the engine, even cycle the injector at a pulse width that leaves the fuel in almost a controllable state, but it isn't. On pump gas, it just isn't controllable. I mean, you're talking about an injector that's so big, I'm asking the injector to close before it's even finished opening, right? Like the injector's starting to come open, like, that's enough, and I shut it again, right? And you can see that. I mean, the latency value alone is, a full millisecond on them, and we're trying to operate them for 0.4. Now, granted, that being said, we operate on 1.4, but you're trying to control an injector before it's even fully opened, and that just doesn't work out. Okay, so it's a little lean right there. Now, so a little bit of a thing there. Go back to my correction. So this is one of those cases where you go, well, it was a little leaner than target. And so I go to the fuel table and I can go to my closed loop target and I can add some more to that area, which right now the target at 1.3 from the factory was 14.5. Clearly at 2800, 14.5 is not enough. And I did say I